Hello, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to a chilly morning on the beach. It's been a while since I've done my last vlog. It's been a while since I've been able to get out, so here I am. And I thought I'd give a bit more focus to this video, so I'm going to be out taking photos. I think you can see behind me there's a beautiful bit of sunrise about to happen, with a bit of interest from some of the windmills out there at sea, so I'm going to have a look at that. It's a bit cloudier than I was anticipating, which is a bit of a shame, but the focus on the video today, if I can stand still, is actually going to be tips for amateur photographers. I've been doing photography properly now in an amateur capacity for about a year, since lockdown started March last year. And I feel like I've learned some things that if someone was thinking about taking on photography that they could really benefit from. So I'm going to aim for, I think, 8 tips is what I've got. I've even got my trusty little notebook. I'll be taking some pictures along the way. So let's see what happens on the beach. I think I've framed up and just taken my first shot there, which is just a nice shot along the beach, where there's some really nice lines of sort of different textures where the water's washed in and out. So there's some nice bits of water catching the light, and that looks really nice. So the first tip isn't necessarily associated with the photo that I've taken, but in some ways it is, and that's about Instagram and the sort of relationship that I've had with Instagram over the first year of my photography. I think the first mistake is to just think of Instagram purely as an app that's based on photography, and that a photograph that has been taken technically well and that you feel like is a great photo won't always necessarily do that well on Instagram. My page has grown very slowly over the last year, and I think that's because my style of photography is more artistic, more photos that would be big prints, on a wall, as opposed to something that's going to do really well on Instagram. An Instagram photo would be something that's quite vibrant, that's going to really punch you in the face with colour and contrast. That's not necessarily my style. So I think the first tip that's important to remember is not to just purely base your feelings about your photography on Instagram. It's a great place to share photos, it's a great place to see other photos and take inspiration, but a good photo doesn't always necessarily do as well on Instagram. I see photos that get thousands of likes, and I really don't understand why. And sometimes it's the algorithm, sometimes it's a bit of a game that you've got to play to get likes and to get followers. So just think about the reason that you're doing photography. So, those hard moments when you're not getting the follows on Instagram, don't let that dishearten you. That's not what photography is about, and it's not purely an Instagram app. This photo that I've taken, that I'll put on the screen now, won't do well on Instagram. I might not even post it on Instagram. I'm not sure, but there's not a lot of contrast, there's not a lot of colour. But I think it tells an interesting story, and I like the moodiness of it. I'm not getting the light that I thought I would this morning, and there's barely really been a sunrise. Sunrise was at 6:30, it's 6:40 now, so that's not really happened, so I'm going to be looking at moody shots, but that's fine, we've just got to adapt. So some black and whites maybe, but one shot's in the bag, so let's move further down, and I'll discuss some more tips as we're going along. No, there's definitely no shot there. I really need new wellies, these do not work. Okay, so the next tip, my trusty book, would be to learn locally. Now, I would think I was quite lucky that I got into amateur photography during lockdown, and I was forced to shoot locally, and largely that's what I'm doing now. I'm certainly local at the moment today. And from being local, I was then forced to train my sort of photographic eye by looking for compositions in places that aren't quite as obvious or easy to find them, like local woodland, local pasture land near where I live, all sorts of things. And I think the point of that was that when it then came to going somewhere where I could take good photos, because the east riding of Yorkshire isn't the best in terms of landscapes. It's not particularly exciting. The woodland's not great. The hills are okay. I enjoy shooting them, but they're not as exciting, I suppose, as somewhere like the Lake District, Scotland, Wales. And then when it came last summer to there being a break and me being able to go to Scotland, I found it much easier to find so many compositions in all of that dramatic landscape. Even if you're not in, we're not in lockdown, I think being forced to keep yourself local, train your eye up until you're ready to go to other places. I'll drop my notebook. Until you're ready to go to other places, I think you'll just notice a massive difference that when you then take that trained eye out into the wilderness in somewhere like Scotland, you will just see compositions everywhere. You'll be spoilt for choice because you've gone through that time, that frustrating time locally, trying to look for compositions and go through the process and not worry so much about the finished result. And I really benefited from that. I think I found a shot. I am struggling. It's a very busy beach with lots of pebbles, so simple compositions are really out on this. But I have noticed, I've just zoomed in on these pebbles. I'm on the zoom lens, which is at the minimum of 70mm, but when the water comes up enough to these rocks and goes out, it drags out these lovely trails of white sort of water. So I'm just waiting. I've got my aperture at 11, so I'll get a longish exposure, but not a really long exposure, and that brings me to another point that I'll make in just a second. So my next tip, I think I'm up to number 3, to learn from other photographers, but not just assume that what other people are saying to do is the right thing. And an example of that are photos like long exposures and depth of field. I'm just going to wait because I think this could be the shot I want. Nice, yes. There's a really nice, there's the lines leading out to the water, and then there's a nice line of water. Hopefully that's come out okay. So you'll see a lot of photographers talking about long exposures. A better example for me is focus stacking. I was obsessed with focus stacking when I first started, thinking that photos that I took, everything needed to be in focus, which is where you take 3 different images, layer them in Photoshop, and I had real difficulties trying to do it. I was trying to do it with all sorts of compositions with flowers in and lots of grass that make it very difficult. And eventually I came to the realisation that the kind of photos that I like to take, the kind of photography that I do, I like depth of field, I like things to be in and out of focus. I don't want everything to be sharp front to back. I think that gives you a kind of image that you might see on the wall, enormous in a sort of a tourist information office or in a travel agent. That's not the kind of photos that I like taking. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with those photos, but that's not me. So don't get bogged down with focus stacking or even long exposures, because you see those photos everywhere. Try and take something different. Try and think for yourself and think about making something different. So don't just follow what everybody else is doing, I suppose is my point. Shoot for yourself. And this is a prime example. I've not done a long exposure here. I'm just seeing really nice simple lines in the waves. So hopefully that one's come out okay, and I'll put that on the screen for you to have a look at now. Funny thing when you're making these vlogs. So I was shooting some B-roll there of just the waves, and this little yellow rock caught my eye. This isn't really a tip, just one of the things I just love about photography. Yeah, so this little yellow rock caught my eye amongst the others. It just stood out, went and got a nice composition, and I got a really nice shot of it. And the waves were coming in, and I had this shot with the yellow rock in the middle. I'll put it up on the screen. And the rocks around it just made quite a nice sort of circle. They just framed it really well. And the waves came in, and when they went out, it was gone. And it was, I felt really sad. For a rock. A rock. Bit of a Tom Hanks Wilson moment there, I think. But I just thought that was a nice moment. So, trusty notebook. I think I'm up to number 5, maybe. 4, could be 4. 4, let's say it's 4. It's about gear. It's very, very easy to fall into the gear trap. So I use, there we go, a D7500. It's got the long lens on it at the moment. That's not my lens, that's my dad's. It's the daddy zoom. And it's a really good camera. I got that camera, I'll admit, I was extremely naive. I started shooting. Our school, I'm a teacher, had a D90, a Nikon D90. I started shooting with that, used to take pictures at school, and I've just spotted the hole in my welly. That's why my feet are getting wet. Definitely need to invest in some more. Yeah, so I shot with that. So I just assumed the best camera for me to get, I thought, oh, DSLR, everybody gets DSLRs, and I know the Nikon camera system quite well, so I get a Nikon. So I did. And then afterwards, I sort of thought, the more I learned about photography, I realised, you know, that there were so many more options, such as mirrorless cameras and the different sensors and things like that. But I don't regret buying this camera. It gives me lovely photographs, and at the level that I'm at, it's more than enough what I need for probably a very long time. Recently, I fell into the gear trap, and I started thinking, right, I'm a year in. Everybody I watch, Tom Heaton, James Popsis, Nigel Danson, Simon Baxter, they all use obviously fantastic cameras, but what is so important to remember, and I have to keep reminding myself, is that these people are professionals. They need the best gear because they're making a living from it, they're selling huge prints. Unless you're printing massive, and I've printed some of my photos and they look absolutely fine. Things like the resolution, the megapixels, and the size of the sensor are certainly, you know, for someone who's a year in like me, a D7500 is absolutely fine. The gear is not what makes a good photograph. It's where you are and what you see. You're much better investing money in a plane ticket to go somewhere, which is what I realised, and I thought, no, I do not need to start paying out for another camera. So don't be all the gear, no idea. Get yourself a nice camera and train that eye, and just get used to seeing beauty in places that other people don't. People that don't have cameras, some of them may see the things, but I feel like I see things that other people don't through my lens, and I find beauty in places where you wouldn't expect to find it, and that's a real privilege. So it doesn't matter what gear you've got, it's the eye that matters. So I'm going to carry on enjoying my coffee, and I will just spare a minute to think about that little yellow rock that was washed out to sea, left all his friends behind. We're just trying to get a shot of the zoom lens. I feel really funny about, I love taking pictures of people, if it's any good. I don't really know enough about street photography or about what the general etiquette is, whether you're allowed to, should I go up to him and say, do you mind if I take some photos? Or, but I noticed him looking at me through the zoom lens, rightfully thinking, why are you taking photos of me? Probably just wants to be out playing with his dog without someone. But capturing those moments of, especially with dogs, they look lovely. So now there's a nice, more perspective up the beach, up this way. Oh, there. It's really misty because of the sea spray, it's not actual mist. So I might put the camera down. It's going to be zoom lens again, I think. Getting that perspective going right all the way along the shoreline of the rocks. Okay, so note to self, make sure you press the record button when you've done a really long piece of camera. So I didn't, so I'm doing it again. Right, so I was talking about editing. Editing, I think, is a really important skill to learn as a photographer. And how you do that is really up to you and what kind of a photographer and a person you are. You'll see a lot of information about whether to shoot in JPEG or to shoot in RAW. JPEG is a compressed file where the editing has basically been done for you, comes out looking really nice. A RAW file captures all the raw data from the sensor of the camera, and you've got to edit it to decide the level of contrast, saturation, warmth in the light and all of those things, okay? So backing up, the sea's coming for me and I've seen the hole in my wellies. Now, I shoot in RAW because I really like having the creative control. Whatever the photo is, even if it's a quick snapshot of something, putting an edit on a photo really doesn't take very long. And I like having the power to be creative with my photography. Like I said, I'm not always looking for vibrant colours, high contrast, put it on the wall in the travel agent's, holiday snap. I want to be creative. I want black and white. Sometimes I want to take the colour out. Sometimes I want to give it a blue tone or a warm tone. And there's so much power in something like Lightroom that I use. And I love editing in Lightroom. It's a really enjoyable part of the process. So that's my advice on that, is to learn how to edit. And all the photographers that I watch, they all do tutorials on Lightroom. There's so much on YouTube to learn. So to reiterate my point about editing, I've shot this photo just down the beach here. And I realised while shooting it, the idea in my mind for the composition changed, and I realised I wanted the white water all around the rocks. So I've got that, I think. I've taken a lot of different ones. So always shoot as many as you can. Then when you get into Lightroom, you can decide which one you like the best. And I'm going to edit them in different ways, okay? Just to give you an idea of, not to show how amazing my editing skills are, but just to show you the different ways that you can edit a photo to give a different look. So here is the raw file now. And then I'll fire up, I don't know how many different versions I'm going to do. I'm sure I'll do a black and white, a faded version. I really like a faded warm look, sort of a sepia tone, but crushing the blacks, which means fading the blacks so they're not too black. And I'll see if I can come up with a couple of other ideas as well. So enjoy these photos. So walking fairly hastily now, because I suddenly realised I could quite easily get cut off with the tide coming in, so I think I'm okay. I've had some interesting experience before with tides. I did attempt to read the timetable. I thought it said low tide was at about 5:30, so I thought it'd be way out, but I don't know how far the tide goes out of Mapperton, to be fair. So it may be, well, if I can make it out to those rocks actually, maybe some compositions there. I was thinking I might carry this on when I get home, but I'm feeling a real buzz, which is a great thing when you're out and shooting and videoing as well. It's going well, not based on the photos, but based on what's happening. And that is going to take me into my next tip, but I will do that when I am safely out of the tide's grasp. Okay, so I've got a nice photo lined up here that is, having said about long exposures, I have taken a long exposure. I'll talk you through that in a minute. The next tip I wanted to talk about was based on what I was saying there, that the idea of going out shooting photos is more of a process than an end result. And I think if you can get yourself used to that mindset that you're going out for the experience of taking photos, if you get something good, then that's good, but if you don't, it's just the creative process of going through it. And that is a tip that I think I would really pass on to someone, that, especially for the first year, if I go back to the beginning of my photography journey last year, none of the photos that I took for the first few months, I think, would be any that I would keep. All they were doing were helping me to learn the art of photography. And obviously I'm still doing that and will keep doing that, but hopefully the difference now is that I take some pictures that I hope will last. And to use Tom Heaton's advice, that finding photos that have got longevity, and there aren't going to be many of those, so the rest of them are there to enjoy the experience of taking them, being out in the fresh air. It's a beautiful morning this morning, I'm on the beach. It's a great start to a Saturday. So it's a process, it's not an end result. Just remember, you're out in the fresh air, you're being creative, and you're seeing things that other people don't see, seeing that beauty through your lens that others don't see. And I found a nice composition here of a line of some sweeping rocks. There you go, so I've got this line of rocks that are leading the eye out towards a sort of a beacon, I'm not quite sure what it is. And I've gone for a long exposure, about 30 seconds, 25 to 30 seconds, to just flatten out that water. Pretty sure it'll be black and white, moody image. But when you see those leading lines, you get with a bit of texture in the foreground with all those rocks, you just got to take it. So let's take that now. Heading back up towards the car now. While I'm walking, I'll give my next tip. I've got 2 more, I think, so this must be tip 7. And this tip is about learning from others. And coming back to what I said really about YouTube, that it's such a fantastic resource, and just watch as many photographers as you can. I have gone back and forth with different ones. Sometimes I agree with what they're saying, sometimes I don't. But you'll eventually find the people that you really fall in line with, you know, your attitude towards photography, not necessarily your views, because I watch people who practice photography in a different way to me. But names such as, sorry, I'm walking up a hill trying to deliver this tip. I've said before about James Popsis, Tom Heaton. I really like the way they do their vlogs. I like the advice that they give, and I like that they don't, they don't come across like they're in love with their own photography. They're very honest and open about their images. But for example, James Popsis doesn't like using tripods. I use one quite a lot, but I still love his videos. Love the way he shoots, and I take a lot from it, especially if I'm out doing more of a street photography shoot, trying to tell stories, which you've seen before on this channel. So learn as much as you can. Get on YouTube, follow these people, and if you're passionate about it, I can sit down and watch that for hours. Okay, I've lined up a final shot. I come up to the top of the car park, well, come up to the top where the car park is, and I've got a really nice, what I think is a really nice shot, and that leads me on to my last tip for amateurs, which is about criticism and photography in general. And this is something that I'm not very good at sticking to at all. I take criticism really badly. I want everyone to love all of my shots, to enjoy them. I want them to get enjoyment out of my photos. But photography is incredibly subjective, and there are always going to be people that don't like the photographs, and that's absolutely fine. And I think you need to take criticism as a positive where you can. I think you also need to understand that sometimes criticism doesn't necessarily apply to you. And what I mean by that is, if you've taken a photo and made a deliberate creative decision, such as a colour tone, or to put a lot of the image out of focus. I'll show you an image now, one of my favourites. I think one of my most popular photos actually, which is one taken in Beverley. And the majority of the photo is out of focus. And the only thing that's in focus is just a slim line of leaves and cobbles in the foreground. And not everybody would like that shot. But if someone criticised it saying, oh, loads of your photo is out of focus, that criticism wouldn't really apply. Because I could say, I know that I've deliberately put most of the photo out of focus, and I enjoy the effect of that creative decision. But someone that likes a lot of sharp focus, a lot of sharp detail in photos wouldn't enjoy that, which is absolutely fine. But that criticism doesn't really apply to me, so I could take that fairly easily. That wouldn't hurt particularly. But if someone just, and it's the level of criticism, if someone just says your photo is not very good and they can't give a reason why, then you can take that, I think. I'm going to take this shot now. It's f11, ISO 100, so I've got some nice fencing in the foreground, and then the dip of this grass sort of comes around to meet the sweep of the shoreline and takes you off into the distance. I like that the fence in the foreground, it's a bit messy on the grass, so not everybody would like it, but I like it. I'm getting all the information in the back of the camera, and I know when I edit this, it's going to look really nice. So let's take that shot now. 2-second timer. So I really hope these tips have been useful to you. Thank you for watching. It's been a beautiful morning, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. See you soon.